King Elenpe was very quiet for a few minutes after listening to what Anante revealed to him about what his trip to Oblafa will be like. Retrieving the key is a quest that must be fulfilled. While the king was deep in thoughts, Anante's body continued to manifest different dimensions of supernatural powers. Sometimes her body will emit light's rays, and at times the green cloud with lightning will suddenly envelope her. Her eyes, however, consistently radiate lights. I was just short of words and deep in my heart. I started wondering if my decision to marry Anante was not a bad one. How can a woman with this strange power be my wife? What if she harmed me with the powers one day? But I truly love her, I said to myself. She's just the dream of every man. She's very virtuous, calm, and pretty with a very nice shape. I once visited her at home and observed the way she treated all her siblings. She will be a very good mother, I concluded that day. A close friend called Attila lived very close to her house. He too agreed with me when I secretly shared my thought with him. He said that despite the fact that they are not very close, HW can attest to the fact that she is a very good wife material. King Elenpe cut my thoughts short by asking Anante, with a very low voice, if he can send someone to go in his place. He said, I have lots of warriors that are very formidable in battle. Can I send them? Your Highness, you are the only one that can go and come back, Anante said. Your contact with the hourglass has immune you already against many evil that you will encounter on the way. King Elenpe was about to utter a statement, but Anante cut in and said, Your Highness, you are about to ask me if you can send one of your son or both of them. King Elenpe looked at her with amazement. Your Highness, if they go, they will not come back. I have tried to inquire already from the hourglass. The fiendish spirits at Oblafa will utilize their weakness for rivalry to stir up conflict that will make them quarrel and as such make many costly mistakes. They will not make it back alive if they go. It was very obvious that King Elenpe have mixed feelings about the whole thing. He was visibly afraid he may never come back. What will happen to the kingdom in his absence? He asked himself. For a moment, he adjusted and put up a bold face. A king must never show any form of fear before his subject, he said to himself. Anante probably sensed this deep-seated fear, and he suddenly started saying, King Elenpe, one of Ososaland, you will go, and you will come back repeatedly. As she was saying this, her voice started echoing and changing to the voice of a man. At a point, it was getting louder and louder. King Elenpe suddenly started resonating to what she was saying. He too continued to say, I am King Elenpe, one of Ososaland. I will go, and I will come back. As he was repeating the declaration, he moved towards Anante with the impression that he is ready to go. I sense Anante too observed this, and the green cloud with lightning suddenly enveloped her again. She then asked the king to go ahead and touch the hourglass. Immediately King Elenpe concurred. He dematerialized before our eyes and disappeared into the spirit world. After his departure, it took a while before all the supernatural things that was happening to Anante to momentarily fade out. For few, we both sat down quietly without speaking to one another. It was crystal clear that she is aware of the fact that I have a measure of fear towards all that's happening. She was actually right. The only reason why I am not demonstrating fear is because I have known her for a long time, and I trust her to a very great extent. When I realized she was calm and looked like the old Anante that I know, I asked her how she is feeling, and she said, she's all right. I then asked her why her father killed 7th Witch of Oblafa. She looked at me calmly, smiled, and said, it's a long story. I laughed in return and said, I have all the time to listen. We both then cawed together. She paused for a while, and after a few minutes, she raised her head, gazed into the distance, and said, my grandfather, Balaka, was a very powerful hunter, and he belonged to an ancient society of hunters called the Okikimiti. The membership of Okikimitis transcend age, gender, tribal, or cultural affiliations. They even have women among them. Ancient history, as related by my grandfather Balaka, to my father had it that, in one of my grandfather's hunting expenditure, he shot an adult male deer with an arrow, but the animal took off with the arrow in its body. As expected, my grandfather pursued after the animal. He knew it is very strange for a wounded deer to run that fast. The animal's blood was dripping as he ran along, trying to escape and caught at all cost. Eventually, the male deer ran inside a cave. When my father traced the blood of the animal to the cave, he was shocked to discover that the deer he shot has transformed to a man and the wound was been attended to by some women. He was more shocked when those women turned towards him, and he discovered that these women were of extreme beauty. He was momentarily mesmerized and enchanted by their beauty, but in his words, he snapped out of it at a point. He then demanded for the deer, which has now transformed to a man. My grandfather got the shock of his life when he suddenly heard the cry of more male deer from a section of the cave. He looked towards the direction with his spiritual eyes and saw lots of men that has been transformed into deer inside a cage. My grandfather told my father that an argument ensued between them concerning the need for him to take away the particular male deer that they turned to a man. Their refusal got him angry, and the argument further degenerated to the extent that he went ahead and boasts that he is not just leaving with the one he shot alone, but he is leaving with all of them. The women dare him, and out of annoyance, he proceeded to use his power to break the cage, chased out all the deer inside out, and then transformed the man, been treated back by the women to a deer. Afterwards, he threw a small gourd towards the entrance of the cage, and a strange whirlwind sucked out all the deer up and took them all away with speed. All these happened within the twinkling of an eye after the argument. This enraged the 7 pretty women who in actual fact are witches. They immediately transformed themselves to hideous looking beasts and surrounded him on every sides. According to what he told my father, he said he also divided himself into 7 parts and fought them vigorously. One of them, who happened to be the 7th witch of Oblafa, however, jumped at him and gave him a very nasty bite. In turn, he slashed the upper limb of the beast with his cutlass, which made the beast to give out a loud, painful cry. He subsequently ran out of the cave and escaped. The wound from the beast that my grandfather sustained refused to heal, and after managing it for some years, he eventually died from it. Before his death, he demanded that my father should revenge and gave him all the necessary powers that he will need to accomplish it. Wait, I motioned to Anante. What happened to the male deer that the whirlwind sucked out of the cave and took away? Oh, sorry, I missed that part, Anante said. Those male deer are actually human beings that have been declared missing in many villages surrounding ours for a long time. The whirlwind actually dropped them at the entrance of their individual villages. I yelled and said, "That's a very strange power." She smiled and said his grandfather was a very strange man based on what she was told. Few months after his burial, my father embarked on a quest to Oblafa and other to avenge the death of his father, and thus carry out his last wish. My father said the 7th, which was aware that he was coming. So the moment he appeared at the place that lead to the entrance of Oblafa, she transformed herself to the image of my father's mother, who happened to be my grandmother. Her plan was to manipulate his emotions, make it difficult for him to carry out his mission, and ultimately kill him, but the scar she sustained from the fight gave her out. The scar, to my father, was a reminder of the fact that she is the one that inflicted a wound that led to my grandfather's death. This fired up my father's anger, and he killed her immediately. My father was expecting a serious battle the other 6 witches, but he was surprised that they were indifferent and refused to defend her. Afterwards, my father returned back to his house. "Woohoo!" I exclaimed and said, "That's a story of vengeance and vendetta." I jokingly said, "I hope your dad did not give you a similar assignment." She laughed in return and said, "The truth is that my father greatly regretted killing her much later. He even cried on one occasion when he was telling us about it. He always cautioned us not to toe his path in vengeance, and that has been my guiding principle in life." Anante went further to say that when we were attacked by the slave traders, she was about to use her power to stop them, but she just has a caution within her to play along as if it seems what was happening has a higher purpose behind it. If I did not do that, Anante said, we will not be here, doing what we are currently doing. That's why I believe that all things always work together for good. We both consented by nodding and then smile. Everything happened exactly as Anante described to King Elenpe when he entered the spirit world. He too was very careful with details at the initial stage. However, something very funny happened to him when he wanted to go out.